Okay, I'm almost done with my Transel Dynamite 150. One drive and two. 6LQ6 amplifier. It's a little weird. I think I've said that before about, a few amps. Transel is one. A little different. They did some interesting tweaks and tricks on this amp. One is, even though it's one drive and two, it is turbocharged, kinda. It's not grounded grid. It's got voltage on the screen grid, which would be 1 and 7 there to your right of that picture. That's the screen grid, and it's got voltage going to that. That's the driver tube. That's the final two tubes. And it's got voltage going to both of them. So it's turbocharged. And it's cathode driven, which is interesting because usually when it's cathode driven, it's grounded grid, not turbocharged. But this one is cathode driven and still turbocharged. Just a little weird, a little different. And that's the grid where it says negative bias 2 and 6, if you can read my chicken scratch. That's grid 1. Where on a grid driven amp you would put the input going into the grid, but again the input comes on pin 3. That's the cathode. It comes around RF in and through there. And if you look at this circuit, it's a little, well, that's very weird for them to do this. This is the RF coming in, from your socket coming in. It goes to the relay, connected to the relay, almost backwards. I'll explain that in a second. And then it goes through the capacitor straight to the grid of the tube at all times. It's not switched by the relay as far as going into this tube. That is very weird. Normally it goes, into the relay, it loops around and goes out when you're receiving, and then when you transmit, it connects, disconnects from the loop out and goes into the tube. Nope, this one is connected to the input of the tube at all times. And then over here, it's connected to the relay almost backwards, the output side of the relay to the common terminal, and then it loops out there. So when you key the relay, it disconnects it from the loop around, and then the output is connected to the output. That's a weird way to do it. But how they did that, or why they did that, save money. They use a double pull, double throw relay, just 2 poles on it. Most amps you will see a 3-pole relay. One for the RF in and one for the RF out, and the other to turn the tubes off and on instead of the tubes cooking. And over here, this is the second pole of this 2-pole relay here. And all it does is ground the cathode, through that. That's my chicken scratch of a choke. RF choke going to the driver, RF choke going to the finals. So one pole grounds the chokes to activate the tubes when you transmit, and then they only use one pole for the RF in and RF out and the switching of that. That is very, very weird. But why they do that? Save money. Also, people ask me all the time, why don't manufacturers make more turbocharged amps? Why did they go grounded grid when, turbo has much more gain and more audio than a grounded grid amp? And I say, well, it's complicated. That's not a question, that's an answer. It's complicated to build a tetrode amp versus a grounded grid. Grounded grids, you ground the grids, grid 1 and 2 there would be grounded instead of being turbocharged. You had an input going to the cathode, all that's grounded, so you don't need all this extra circuitry stuff, the bias and the screen voltage and the input, and then you had an output. That's it, very simple. Look at this schematic. This is the RF deck of this 1 drive and 2 amp, right? Very complicated. I did a reverse engineering and made this schematic, and by the way, most techs can't, or so-called techs can't do that. They can't look at this and on their own, without any help, without any other schematics or anything else, they can't look at this and look at that and come up with this. And that's the RF deck. That's the power supply of, you know, this guy and the transformer, the wiring, and it's got the output side of the tubes, or the tank stuff over there for both the tubes. But that's the power supply. I'm going to leave the camera on that for a minute, because sometime when I get lost, I pull up my own handmade schematic here. And I haven't powered this thing up yet. All I did was replace the caps. I ain't put the high voltage caps in there yet. And made this reverse engineered schematic, so I have a reference when I go playing with this thing. But anyway, that is a very complicated amp. And then it's mounted on a circuit board, and the circuit board is mounted sideways. It's a real PITA to get in and out of it, and, you know, get the wires off and undo that circuit board. So I want to make sure it's right, and if, you know, if it's not working, at least I kind of got an idea of what's what, who's who, and why. Because if you don't know what's going on with that, or if you can't read a schematic, that's the RF deck again, or the RF part of this. It's not a deck, it's a one-piece amp, stupid. But anyway, y'all gotta excuse me. I'm a senior now. I have my senior moments all the time. And again, you know, I pick up a camera and I don't write a speech. I don't have a teleprompter. I just pick up a camera, you know, thinking about a minute, pick up a camera and start running my mouth. Again, most people can't do that. Most techs can't do this. You know, they can maybe work on an amp, work on a schematic, you know, have a schematic, but they can't write it out. But anyway, this is a reference for me and anybody else. And by the way, the Nitro 300A, it's more tubes, but it's very similar to this. When I had a few Nitro 300As, I did power supply only schematic of it. And I didn't even take the time to do the RF deck, because I'm like, man, I ain't got time for this. But very interesting amp. You know, all this here is just for the meter, like 9 or 10 components. This is the keying circuit here, you know, for it. That's the turbocharged. You know, it's got it's cathode driven. Input coming here. Then the output of this one comes around and goes to the input of that one. And that's the turbocharge on that one. Or no, it's not. That's the negative bias on that grid. I'm looking at the camera and I can't see it that well. Again, I'm getting old. So that's my chicken scratch. This amp is a little bit too much for the average mud duck. So if you got one that ain't working, you start asking me questions, it's like, I can't help you. But anyway, schematic of the Transel Dynamite 150. And again, that's the power supply. And the Nitro 300A is pretty much built the same, near this, except it's, you know, basically twice as much amp. You know, 2 transformers and basically 2x this, but kind of the same build. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. I'm going to put the camera down and get back to it and hopefully finish this guy off soon, but not tonight. I'm going to bed. Good night, everybody. Bye.